Greetings to everyone gathered here today for this wonderful virtual ceremony. These are difficult times indeed, but let's not let current events dampen the spirit of today's celebration. It is a real pleasure to speak to you and your families on this exciting day. I would like to thank Dean Silva, Dr. Lowe, and the Board of Trustees for this great privilege. I gave a lot of thought to what we could talk about today and decided I would just tell you some real-life stories about some of the many events in my career that shaped me as a young doctor. These are lessons that I learned along the way that had a profound influence on me, so I hope that you can learn from them too and thus enrich your own careers. But first, let me congratulate each and every one of you on this important day. You should be extremely proud of what you have accomplished so far, just in case it hasn't hit you. Yet there are almost 8 billion people in the world, and only a very few individuals have done what you have done and can do what you are about to do. Medicine is the most honorable profession in the world, bar none. Filled with satisfaction beyond your wildest dreams, only a handful of people will ever know the joys of caring for your fellow man, easing pain and suffering, and giving hope in life when there is none. Nothing will ever compare to that in your life. Remember that and be proud of it. You have a very long and hard road ahead of you filled with some risk and uncertainty, so I want to make sure that road is a little easier for you by sharing with you some of the things I learned that I wish someone had told me along the way. So let us begin. My first theme is humility. It was 1973 and I was a first-year medical student at Duke University. I was the youngest member of the class at 20 years of age, never graduated college, yet somehow ended up at one of the best medical schools in the country on very short notice, totally unprepared for what lay ahead of me. I was a very good student, pretty much straight A's, not because I was particularly smart, but because I studied around the clock with little distractions and had a healthy fear of failing. We had a pass-fail system at Duke, but I could tell after the first few months that I was definitely not at the top of the class, more somewhere in the middle, or honestly, the bottom, despite studying relentlessly. This got me real nervous. I went to see the dean one day to discuss my insecurities. He was a psychiatrist and was sitting in a big chair, smoking a pipe, looking over my resume and grades. After a few moments, he said, "Well, Richard, it's pretty clear what the problem is." I said, "Great. What do you think it is, Dean?" "It's very simple. You're just not as smart as you think you are." Well, my heart stopped and my jaw dropped. He said, "Look, Richard, you're in the company of some of the smartest students in the country. All of them are older than you, more mature than you, have advanced degrees, and most are married with kids." Basically, he said, I didn't stand a chance, I thought. But then he said, "Look, Richard, just relax a little and quit studying so much. We picked you for a reason, and we will get you through this just fine, so don't worry." Well, this was a shock to my system, but it did resonate with me and made a huge difference in the next few years. I managed to muddle my way through school and graduated without any further drama. So our first lesson for today is humility. Know that no matter how smart you are, there is always someone smarter than you out there. And by the way, as long as we're at it, richer than you, better than you, etc. So don't take yourself too seriously. Be humble. Next is compassion. We do about 20 to 30 procedures a day in our lab, every one of them hair-raising and risky, but most of the patients do just fine. But remember that just because you can fly through 8 or 9 procedures a day without batting an eye, for that family in the waiting room, it is their one and only procedure for their one and only mom or dad, maybe for their entire life. So just know that they are waiting in the fear, and from the minute you walk out of the OR to speak to them and they see you, they will be extremely anxious and will hang on every word you say. So be compassionate and speak in soothing terms using the simplest of language so they will understand everything you say. They may appear to be listening, but they may not be hearing every word you say. You would be surprised to know how much patients' families forget minutes after you just explained everything to them, then complain that no one spoke to them post-op. I learned this for myself when my younger son Danny needed some minor surgery at a very young age. Even though I had done thousands of complex cardiac procedures myself, I never really understood what families go through while they are waiting for those encouraging words. Sitting in that waiting room myself that day, I was filled with anxiety and kept looking at my watch, wondering what was taking so long, and worrying about every possible complication that could occur. It might as well have been brain surgery, as anxious as I was. When the surgeon walked out, all I wanted to hear was that Danny was okay, and he was. So the lesson is be compassionate when dealing with even the simplest of acts you do as a doctor. You might be calm and cool, but your patient's family will not be, no matter how composed they may appear. They will hang on every word, so choose your words wisely. The next topic is honesty. I have been in medicine for almost 50 years, and I'm very proud of the fact that I have never been sued for medical malpractice once. I've had a lot of close calls and plenty of harrowing complications. It's the nature of the beast, and it will happen to you someday. But how you deal with your patients and their families at a time of crisis, when there has been a complication, will define who you are as a doctor. I learned that patients and families have an infinite capacity for forgiveness because they believe in their doctors and know that you are human and fallible, but they do not want to be lied to. As hard as it is, you must be painfully honest and admit if you did something wrong. Any amount of spinning or backpedaling will certainly backfire, can never be undone, and very likely will come back to haunt you someday. Learn how to say, "It was my fault, and I am sincerely sorry," and mean it. Next, be a good listener. Just last year, I had a patient in the hospital for a procedure. He was transferred from the desert the night before with an NSTEMI, and I saw him on the schedule for later in the day, and it was a very busy day. The fellow had already seen the patient, but had not reported back to me, so I ran up there to see him and his family to get the scoop myself to make sure we did not delay the lab. I noticed his name, and it was more of a European-sounding name. I walked into the room and saw a large Latino family, probably 10 members, all huddled around the patient's bed, very loving and attentive. I introduced myself and saw the patient for the first time. He was a hulking figure of a man with a snow-white, foot-long beard and dark eyes. He spoke with a very thick European accent, so I was greatly puzzled by this unusual family. His son was at the bedside and holding his father's hand and spoke with a thick Spanish accent. I asked him where his father was from. He said he was from Poland and that he was a Holocaust survivor who managed to survive Auschwitz. I saw the tattoos on his inner left arm confirming his story. The lab called indicating they were ready to go, but I waved them off, pulled up a chair, then asked him to tell me a little bit about himself and his life. After 30 minutes, I found out that he was sent to Auschwitz at the age of 10 and managed to survive the horrors of that camp. Due to his size and good health, the Germans put him to work, but he lost the rest of his family, some 30 members. Sadly, he was the only survivor. Being of German descent myself, an Army veteran, and coming from a family of World War II veterans who all served in Germany, liberating those very camps, I had a more than casual interest in his story. Once liberated, he found his way to America, then to El Centro, where he married a Mexican woman and raised a large family. After talking about his procedure and answering all of his questions, he looked at me and said, "Don't let me die today." That was a powerful moment for me, given what he had been through and seen already in his life. I told him that was definitely not going to happen today, and I left the room very moved by the whole experience. Everything went just fine, and he left the hospital uneventfully. The experience, though, reminded me to be a good listener. No matter how busy you are, every patient has a story to tell. Take the time to learn it. And while it may not be relevant to the immediate problem, it creates a human connection and bond that lets the patient know that their doctor is listening to them and cares about them as a person and not just as a heart or a lung or a liver. That doctor-patient bond is sacred, so don't treat it lightly. Our next lesson for today is related to the last lesson. It is about resisting the scourge of the electronic medical record. While I agree it is a necessary evil in today's world, which pays great dividends in efficiency, we all have to resist the unintended consequences of what it has done to diminish the human connection. I have seen more than once both attendings and fellows talking with their backs to a patient while they are typing on a wall computer. Nothing can be more impersonal. I was a patient myself recently, and a resident took my history, and I experienced this exact same thing. And I must say, it really irritated me. When the attending came in, an older doctor, like me, he sat across from me with a pen and some paper and never budged once. The contrast between old and new was striking. And quite honestly, it made me very sad, as if I was witnessing the passing of a great generation of doctors. I know it's important to get the data crunched into the system, But please think about a way you can sit face to face while you talk to your patient and do the typing later. I promise you it will mean a lot to your patient and will make you a better doctor. Our next topic is charity. As young doctors, you have a God-given gift. Make sure you share it with the world. In December 1991, I came to work on a Monday morning, and one of my partners came running into my office and told me that he had just placed a Palmaz Schatz stent in none other than Mother Teresa over the weekend. I started panicking since the stent was not FDA approved, so I had a lot of explaining to do since I was the principal investigator for the protocol, and of course it had my name on it. It turns out Mother Teresa had been in Tijuana for several weeks at one of her missions and had become very ill. She had many medical problems but refused to come to the hospital until she was nearly dead. They threw her into the ambulance and whisked her away to the Scripps Clinic late on a Friday night. My partner took her to the lab and did a heroic balloon angioplasty to several vessels, but one looked like it was going to close, so he took the bold step to place a stent to keep her from infarcting. When I went to see her the next day, I was very worried that she wasn't going to make it, so I called Johnson & Johnson, our sponsor, right away to give them the bad news. They also freaked out, and the first thing they asked was, "Did you get a consent form?" Well, we didn't, and she had a very stormy course, but over the next 3 weeks, she did get better. I got to spend many hours every day with her, and it was a remarkable experience, mostly from a spiritual perspective. She was and certainly remains the most memorable person in my life. What got to me most was her selfless dedication to the poorest people of the world, much to her own peril. She told countless stories of the poor lepers in Calcutta, who were all but shunned by everyone but her and her Sisters of Charity. She said the one thing they craved more than food or shelter was the comfort of human touch, something they rarely experienced. I told her as she neared discharge that I really wanted to raise some money for her missions. She grabbed my hands and said, "I don't want your money." That really surprised me. "This is what I want. I want your hands and your heart to touch my people." She said, "God gives doctors a great gift of knowledge and skills, and I need that more than anything for all the poor people of the world." It was a very moving experience for me and inspired me to give back to the less fortunate in the world, not with money or things, but with service. You should do the same. Share your gifts. Next, for those of you who are going into procedure-related specialties like surgery or cardiology, I have a special category for you, which I call shortcuts. Only our surgical colleagues here today will appreciate this lesson, as they have all learned it themselves. So the lesson here is there are no shortcuts in the operating room, or in life for that matter. Shortcuts result in long cuts. My fellows get really tired of hearing that from me. It is true in the cath lab, but it is also true in life, which makes it a lesson worth learning when you are young. I learned this the hard way many years ago. It was early in my career, and I had a difficult case before me. In our business, after a while, you get a little cocky and think you can do anything. But as Dr. Lowe will tell you, also in our business, there is no room for error. And even the simplest of cases can turn into disasters, which could mean the difference between life and death. We were trying to fix a left main artery in a very sick patient whose LV function wasn't great. I had a choice to put in a balloon pump or just wing it, counting on my quick skills to get in and out so fast that his LV function would not matter. I chose the shortcut and did not put the balloon pump in. Once our wire was across and after ballooning the main, we tried to deliver the stent, but it kept getting stuck. So I had another choice, and my inner voice told me to change for a stiffer wire. But I did not listen to that inner voice because it would take too long, and I was certain I could get it. Well, you pretty much can tell what happened next. The wire came flying out, and the main artery collapsed, resulting in refractory shock. We got the patient back, but he had a long, protracted hospital course. Eventually went home and did just fine. But that moment in time made a profound impact on me and resonates with me to this day. I had a choice to do the right thing, but chose the shortcut, and it nearly cost this patient his life. I made a promise never to do that again. The lesson is always take a few minutes to do the right thing, not sometimes, but every time. This is true in life too. While you may get away with the shortcuts every now and then, in the end, it always makes things longer and more difficult. So no shortcuts. This next piece of advice also applies to both life and medicine. I gave a lecture once at the UCSD School of Business on entrepreneurship. At the end, I got a few questions, and the one that stuck with me most was from a young student who was about to graduate and he was agonizing over taking a job offer or going back to school to get yet another degree. I asked him what his concern was about the job offer. Well, he said it was a small startup company, and what would happen if he took the job and the company failed or if it didn't work out. I told him to take the job. At your age, I said, it's impossible to make any mistake that you can't recover from and make a better person and become a better person as a result. The best thing that can happen to you at your age is to fail a few times. It will prepare you for bigger and better things later in life. The same applies to medicine. As you enter internship, remember that no one expects you to know anything. So ask lots of questions and don't be afraid to make mistakes so you can learn from them. Now is the time to fall on your face and skin your knees. The higher you go up the ladder, the harder and harder it is to get a pass for blundering. So enjoy internship as the last free pass you'll ever get to screw up. Make good use of it. The next lesson is the most important for today, so I saved it for last. This is my family behind me, and I show them to remind you that your career and your patients are very important, but they are not more important than your family. Doctors have exceptional challenges, unlike others, to juggle work and home. It is critical that you keep your spouse and your children as the center of your life. They are the cornerstone of everything that is precious, and you owe them your utmost attention. My chief of medicine, the great Eugene Stead, once said, "Medicine is a demanding mistress." It is indeed, but this should not divert you from the most important secret to your success. I can tell you from personal experience that fame and fortune are both fleeting, and that the only thing that really matters in life is your family. Keep that in mind, and when the choices confront you in your career between work and family, always pick wisely. If you do not, you will greatly regret it, because these are things that you can never get back once lost. Family comes first. Finally, I am frequently asked about what the highlight of my career has been. I have to say 2 events are most memorable for me. One was having our stent displayed in the Museum of American History at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. There, in the Inventing in America exhibit, center stage is one of Dr. Palmaz's first stents on display, right next to Steve Jobs' first computer on one side and Irwin Jacobs' first cell phone on the other. Quite impressive company. Second was receiving the Russ Prize for Biomedical Engineering in 2019, considered the American Nobel Prize. It was the first time that Julio and I were recognized together as a team, something I am very proud of. These 2 events remind me how fortunate I have been. I've always felt that I've received much more credit than I deserve, though, through the years. I'd rather think that I have been much more lucky than smart, especially since meeting Dr. Palmaz in 1985, an event that not only changed my life, but the cardiology world as we know it. Without a doubt, that was my sliding door moment, and it reminds me how fickle life can be. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I bring it up today only to remind you that your life also will be a series of sliding doors, filled with interesting people and opportunities that you just can't predict or plan on. Take each of those opportunities to see what's on the other side of the door. Don't be afraid, and don't hesitate to walk right through when that door opens. You will never know what you will find on the other side. Well, my time is drawing to an end, so I want to take this opportunity to congratulate you all one more time. Please know how sincerely proud I am of each and every one of you. I wish you the greatest success and happiness in life as you begin this wonderful journey. Make the most of it. I am proud to call you a colleague in the family of medicine, and hope that our paths will cross again one day. There will certainly be a fork in the road for you someday. One road of certainty, and the other of perhaps some risk and unknown. Take the road less traveled. Take some risks. And remember the day Dr. Schatz told you, leap, and the net shall appear. Thank you for your attention. Greetings to everyone gathered here today.